What's going on, my good people? I was going back through some old notes and I found my roaring 20 comparisons. So in 1920, the whole 20s was a very flourishing time for America. America was coming into its new heyday. And America flourished in the 20s. I'm talking about big time flourish. A lot of money made by a lot of people in the 20s. But there was a lot of greed and a lot of reckless things that happened in the 20s as well. And I made a whole bunch of notes, and I gave these notes out about 4 to 5 years ago, maybe 3 to 4 or 5 years, who knows. But I gave these out, and now I'm gonna go through them again because back then it didn't make much sense to you guys. But now, just watch these comparisons. Back then we had a pro-business politics. We had pro-business politics, pro-business, business. You had a racist president named Calvin Coolidge. Now, let me tell you how Calvin Coolidge set the pace for the decade. He set the pace for the decade by saying the chief business of the American people is what? Business. While signing the 1924 immigration bill, he was quoted as saying, "America must be kept American." Remember that? Republicans won most of the presidencies in these times. Government corruption got out of hand. The Warren G. Hardin cabinet. Now, if you want to go do your research on Warren G. Hardin and his cabinet, and the corruption that was placed inside of them, go ahead and do that on your own. Businesses were favored over people in this time. Governments tried to weaken unions, which is common. Cabinet members shared pro-business views. This is all politics. We just talking politics. It was laissez-faire capitalism, or just allow them to do, as the French would say, was favored, which was a time of decreased regulation. Don't you see decreased regulation? They're rolling back a lot of stuff. Okay, continuing on. This portion is the credit. So this was the time of mass production and new products being introduced to the market, which led to uses of credit being over-leveraged. See, when people are creating things and you're at a time of great wealth for your country, people just create things out of willy-nilly, man. It's all types of things you create when you're sitting around looking at possibilities. So in this time, credit, because people just buying things, because new things being introduced at a very, very rapid rate during the 20s. A lot of people got rich. A lot of people got insanely rich during the 20s. Now, let's look into business. Business was great in the 20s. Assembly line work helped productivity. Now, the thing with assembly line work is it sped up the work that people were doing by hand. Today, you see AI speeding up the work of by 3 or 4 humans. America became the world reserve currency in the 20s, which improved the financial status and helped industry. We've been the world reserve currency for over 20 years, over 100 years now, over a century, which is long in the grand scheme of things. But I think we're on the other side of that at this point. So when you're looking at the 20s and you're looking at who has a reserve currency, when you look at 2025, who's it going to be going to? Because it can't stay with America because America's too fat and bloated. People made more money, so they bought more. Corporations got rich and employees got the short end of the stick. Don't that sound like that today? Oh, another thing that I forgot to mention about credit. Farms were a big thing back then, and people were introducing this farm equipment that was helping people get farms together fast and industrial, very, very fast. And people were using credit to get these machines. And that's another thing that led to the crash. It was a lot of people that had over-leveraged farms. Wealth gaps were created between the wealthiest 5% that exceeded that of the 60%. So now we have today the 1% it's 1 to 2% of the people in the world that make more than the other 99%, which is very, very crazy. 40% of Americans were in poverty. So even though things were flourishing, like I'm talking about headlines, all-time highs, all-time highs, all-time highs. 40% of Americans were in poverty in the 40s, meaning the 20s. So while it looked good on the surface, there's a lot of people that were still in poverty. Wall Street celebrated big returns. Corporations left the North and headed to the South for cheap labor. You see things like migrations from companies, hell, damn near all of Silicon Valley done moved to Texas almost. You got other companies that had moved from the West Coast, the North, they moved down South because the South is cheaper. Domestic terrorism. Gotta have domestic terrorism. Things are going great. But why the domestic terrorism? The next thing is why the domestic terrorism? The resurgence of the KKK as white people in America saw immigration rise. Attacks and lynchings became more prevalent. White men came home from the war with no money, so they denounced Jews, Catholics, and immigrants from Russia and Asia, but mostly black people, because we were here the most. African Americans, not black folks and people of color, African Americans. We were here. So in 1921, the revival of the white supremacist group KKK was created, and they were targeting black folks. Now, let's look at the reason. Black prosperity, the Harlem Renaissance. Black people started to move north, which is why Harlem became the mecca of black entertainment. High culture flourished. This is Atlanta now. It might be Houston, might be Dallas too, but mostly Atlanta, because Atlanta is the land of black prosperity in America. There were prosperous times where dance crazes flourished. See, when times are good, people they have a lot of time on their hands. They can make up all types of dance crazes to try to get seen online. And back then, you couldn't even get seen. So it's even worse today. And movies became America's best pastime. Hollywood emerges in this time as well. Women free expression. Women won the right to vote in these times. They also became more free, drinking and smoking in public and wearing sexier clothing. This is not, I'm telling you, things change. The more they change, they remain the same. Men still want them to be homemakers. Ain't that like today? Press censorship. Press had a whole bunch of information. They were sitting on a whole bunch of greed, corruption, Jeffrey Epstein, and, things like that. So a lot of press censorship. There's a lot of things in that time that you could not say. They was just censoring all types of press. Truth was not a popular thing in these times. Because when you're telling people the truth, like, hey, man, we probably need to get this thing together. They're like, no. Good times will always be. So, let's move on to the next one. Immigration. First immigration bill was signed in 1921. The second bill was signed in 1924, further limiting how many immigrants were allowed from Europe, and all Asians were banned at this time, except Filipinos, of which only 50 were allowed per year unless they were going to Hawaii to work. Immigration. Y'all see them at MacArthur Park, where Carlton was at? Carlton became hard on Fresh Prince. At MacArthur Park, man, they had them ICE agents running through that place trying to catch people. So they got the new immigration bill that they done passed. Labor migration. People moved to big cities because that's where the jobs were. Don't you see people going from the country to the city? Times never change. Prohibition came about in the 20s, and this set off crime. This set off, it was a big rift between Christians and Prohibition at this time. So Prohibition led to high amounts of crime. Also empowered people involved in organized crime. So your Al Capones, your Meyer Lansky's, all of these people became prevalent in this time because they could feel a need that others could not, which is bringing liquor over here because people are not going to stop drinking. World wars brought on by a depression. We'll get back to that. The depression of 1920 and 2021, which was a depression that started off before the Roaring '20s, lasted about 14 months and was followed by the Roaring '20s, which became a period of economic prosperity. So now that we're getting close to the end of the Roaring '20s, let me tell you what started happening. The wheels start falling off. Towards the end of the 20s, October 1929, the stock market crashed and America's invested wealth suddenly lost 26 billion in value, which led to the Great Depression. So it's a lot of talks about this. They call it what? I'm not sure what they call it, black something. But this was the stock market crash of 1929. This is the one that put a lot of people who had money into poverty. Unrealized gains is what I call them. If your money is sitting in the stock market and it is not in your pocket, it is what we call an unrealized gain. So what happened with the stock market crash, it was a lot of people that still had money sitting in the stock market that realized that they could not get their money when the stock market went down. Their investment had lost almost 50 to 60% overnight, which led to a Great Depression, which affected most people all the way through the 30s. Damn, about 4 or 5 years or 6 years through the 30s. A lot of people never recovered from the stock market crash of 1929. They kids was poor. Like, they was poor, their kids was poor, their kids was poor after 1929. The Great Depression. This is what African Americans need to pay attention to. African American unemployment was at 50%, and they were said to be last hired, first fired. When you see all these layoffs today, they say black women are leading the way on layoffs. And I'm sure second, right behind you, is the black man. You're always going to be last hired, first fired. Get used to it. Get used to it. You're going to have to create something for yourself. You're going to have to do something. I don't know what you're going to have to do. But World War II ramps up. But the Great Depression, it helps wean us off of the depression. So that was the end of the Roaring '20s, man. The Roaring '20s started as a long time of economic prosperity in America, but eventually the greed, the corruption, and all of the foolishness, the divisiveness in the society led to a collapse. Do you see what is happening today? Do you see how divided people are? Do you see that everything is at all-time highs? Corruption and greed are running rampant. Don't you see this today? Am I lying to you? Or am I telling you something that I see? But anyways, take the notes if you will, or not take the notes. Peace out.